Keir Starmer's bold energy policies, hailed as a pivotal part of Labour's plan for a greener future, are now at the centre of a growing storm. Critics argue that these policies could drive up energy bills for households by as much as £300 annually, with pensioners facing an even more painful hit due to the scrapping of the winter fuel payment. The Green Agenda, which Labour has tied to its ambition of making the UK a global leader in clean energy, is being branded by some as a reckless gamble that could leave the country more vulnerable, while households bear the brunt of the costs. One of the loudest voices warning of potential disaster is Angela Knight, former CEO of Energy UK, who has condemned Starmer's green energy proposals as very foolish and ill thought out. Knight argues that pushing to rapidly phase out domestic oil and gas production will leave Britain exposed to the volatile global energy market, making the nation far more dependent on foreign imports of natural gas. If you haven't got your own energy and are reliant on the open market, that puts your energy security significantly more at risk, she said. The UK, Knight continued, could see household energy bills rise by up to £300 a year as a result of Labour's energy agenda. This would compound the misery for many Britons, particularly pensioners, who are already facing the loss of the £300 winter fuel payment after Labour decided to scrap the benefit for nearly 10 million recipients. For many, this is a double hit. Just as they lose critical support, their energy bills could skyrocket under the new regime. These concerns have been echoed by senior Conservative figures, with Sir John Redwood leading the charge against Labour's energy strategy. Redwood, a staunch opponent of Labour's energy plans, has warned that by banning new oil and gas licences in the North Sea, Starmer's government is jeopardising the UK's energy security and risking tens of thousands of jobs in the sector. Labour's damaging policies on energy will make Britain dangerously dependent on foreign dictators, he said. We are closing down our domestic oil and gas production, and Putin will be delighted to see it happen. Labour's windfall tax on energy companies has also drawn intense criticism. Designed to capture more revenue from the profits of oil and gas giants, the levy has been met with resistance from industry insiders who warn it could backfire. A report by Offshore Energies UK, OEUK, highlighted that Labour's decision to increase the windfall tax to 78% could result in a £12 billion loss of tax revenue over time, as it deters companies from investing in new projects in the UK. OUK's report also predicts that new investments in the UK oil and gas sector could drop significantly, putting 35,000 jobs at risk and potentially reducing the country's oil and gas production by as much as two-thirds. These alarming forecasts have led to growing unrest within the energy sector, with many industry leaders accusing Labour of creating a hostile environment for business. Labour's tax policies are killing investment, said one industry insider. Companies are pulling out of the North Sea, and the consequences will be felt across the entire economy. Even international experts have weighed in on the debate. Dr. Scott Tinker, an American energy expert and geologist, told GB News that Labour's decision to ban new oil and gas licences in the North Sea would have minimal impact on global emissions, but it could have a profound effect on the UK's energy security. A ban on oil and gas production in the North Sea would have very little impact on global CO2 or methane emissions because the oil and gas would just be produced elsewhere, Dr. Tinker said. What it will do is shift more economic power to autocrats like Putin and the Saudi regime. Starmer's green energy agenda has also sparked debate within the scientific community. While many experts agree that climate change is a pressing issue, some are critical of the alarmist tone used by Labour to push its agenda. Climatologist Zeke Housefather has cautioned against exaggerating the potential impact of climate change, arguing that it can undermine public trust in legitimate scientific concerns. Climate change is bad enough, Housefather said. We should not be trying to exaggerate it. However, not everyone agrees with this view. Tom Burke, founding director of climate think tank E3G, has defended Labour's approach, arguing that the language is appropriate given the scale of the crisis. Burke believes that failing to address climate change with the urgency it demands could have catastrophic consequences for both the UK and the world. Climate policy failure will transform daily life for people as severely as a war. It is a fundamental threat to our prosperity and security, Burke said. It is not alarmist. It's a reality that we cannot ignore. The debate over Labour's energy policies has also extended to the government's decision to axe the winter fuel payment for millions of pensioners. The move has been met with widespread condemnation, with critics accusing Labour of turning its back on some of the most vulnerable members of society. The winter fuel payment, which provides up to £300 to help pensioners with their heating bills during the coldest months, has long been a lifeline for many older Britons. Its removal has been described as politically dangerous and short-sighted. Former Conservative MP Brendan Clark-Smith believes that the decision to scrap the winter fuel payment is a major misstep that could cost Labour dearly at the polls. "It's an unwritten rule in British politics that you don't upset pensioners," Clark-Smith said. "Labour's decision to cut this vital benefit is going to have serious political consequences." Public sentiment appears to back Clark-Smith's assessment. Recent polling shows that Labour's popularity has slipped significantly in the months since Starmer took office. According to a poll by More in Common, Labour and the Conservatives are now neck and neck, with both parties securing 27% of voter support. Meanwhile, Reform UK has surged to 21%, and the Liberal Democrats have risen to 13%. Labour's green energy policies, combined with the scrapping of the winter fuel payment and controversial moves on issues like prison releases and immigration, are seen by many as contributing to the party's rapid fall from grace. Clark-Smith described the situation as a honeymoon period gone horribly wrong for Starmer, with Labour struggling to maintain the public's trust now that they are in power. "Policies that sound good in opposition don't always work in reality," he said. Despite the growing criticism, Labour remains committed to its climate goals. Ed Miliband, who serves as Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, has been one of the driving forces behind Labour's green agenda. Miliband has repeatedly warned of the dangers posed by climate change, describing it as the biggest threat to nature and food security, and calling for urgent action to address the issue. But Miliband's rhetoric has not gone unchallenged. Lord Craig Mackinlay, a Conservative peer and chair of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, has accused Miliband of using alarmist language to push Labour's agenda. Mackinlay argues that the UK should focus on realistic solutions to the energy crisis, such as expanding domestic gas production and investing in nuclear energy, rather than relying on what he describes as fanciful green energy plans. The controversy surrounding Labour's energy policies shows no sign of abating. With energy prices still high and pensioners facing an uncertain winter without the support of the winter fuel payment, the public will be watching closely to see how Labour handles the fallout from its ambitious yet divisive agenda. The government's decisions in the coming months could have lasting consequences for both the economy and the party's political future. As the nation grapples with the impacts of Labour's energy policies, the debate over how to balance the need for environmental action with economic stability will continue to rage. Whether Starmer can navigate the political and economic fallout of his government's green agenda remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the choices made today will shape the future of Britain's energy landscape for decades to come.